Hello, everyone. Bryan Gottlieb here.
It's Endell here.
What's up, everybody?
I'm Amy.
I'm Hank.
And we're Goblin Reserve.
I'm Matt Rogers. I'm from PCG.
I'm Craig Krempels.
James White here, listening to the Instant Speed podcast.
This is the Instant Speed Podcast.
You're listening to the Instant Speed podcast.
Welcome to the Instant Speed Podcast.
To welcome you to the Living Legend podcast. Nope, wrong podcast. What's the name of your podcast, Flake?
Not Arsenal Pass.
You're listening to the Instant Speed Podcast, easily the second best podcast for the Flesh and Blood game.
Big shout out. Hopefully Flake's found somebody other than me to be on it this time.
Hit that like and subscribe button now.
Well, I work hard. How come everybody wants to shuffle my cards? And I think that it's true. There's nothing of importance on the 6 o'clock news, and I believe
The Realm Games is the industry leader in both service and unique events in the TCG arena. Whether it's running the largest community-run tournaments for Flesh and Blood or providing service with a generosity that is unique to the Realm Games, you can count on the Realm for an unforgettable experience. Check out their website at realmgamingnetwork.com for details about their $50,000 Flesh and Blood tournament circuit happening all across North America. But check out everything else going on at the Realm, including tournaments for all kinds of other experiences. And just for you, ISP listeners, use the code INSTANT5, that's INSTANT 5, to get 5% off your checkout when you're buying from the Realm. Welcome back, friends, to the Instant Speed Podcast, episode 111, brought to you now by the Realm Games. Good friends of Flesh and Blood, good friends of the community, the Realm Games. Go check them out. More about that down the line. We're doing giveaways every single week on this show, sponsored by the Realm Games. So stay tuned for some of that information. But this time, we're coming back strong. We're coming back feeling good. Took some time off, came back from New Zealand, and I brought with me Bryan Gottlieb, a senior game designer. Bryan Gottlieb?
It always takes me a minute. Hold on. Yes, senior game designer, lead game developer. Those are how those break down.
Cool. I'll just call you Bryan.
Sure.
And part-time caster, which I think is something new because you have mentioned it to me over the past year that your intention was to essentially throttle back that aspect of it. So I'm going to ask you this to sort of start off. Are you missing it? And I understand that part of it was when you told me it's like you have so many other responsibilities that this is something where the travel's going to kill you. You're more in New Zealand, but you have to be missing it.
I am missing it, but I'm also still doing it. Like it's not like I've actually fully extricated myself from it. My schedule is certainly less than it used to be when I was living in the States, but I hopped in the booth a little bit with you down in Queenstown. I have the Pro Tour coming up in LA, so that is just right around the corner. And I think I have another event on my schedule. I think I will be at US Nationals as well. So, I'm still out there. I'm still in the streets casting once in a while.
Every now and then. Why not? And we all appreciate it, of course. Some more than others. I do, Bryan. I appreciate you. But let's talk about the Celebrational. This big 5-year, basically, celebration of the game, of where it has, what it has attained and what it has achieved for so long. And essentially, the celebration of those who have helped get it there and the achievements of the people who have really just been part and parcel to the game from a competitive standpoint, a content standpoint, a culture standpoint. How did the Celebrational wrap up for you on your side? And I understand that you were part of it from the capacity of, there was a certain degree of, I don't want to say you were part of the planning, but you were there as an LSS entity, as a LSS employee, but also as somebody who is just taking part in all the fun.
Yeah, I feel like I kind of got both sides of it, honestly. Like, yes, I was there as an LSS employee and did some work. That's what they call my job, work, while I was there. But I also just celebrated, man, the same way everyone else did. I did all the awesome stuff. I got to bring my wife along with me, and it was just like, I really can't put it into words, honestly. It was the perfect encapsulation of now nearly 5 years of success, and sharing that success with everyone, and with the people who helped lift you up to it, with the people who work so hard to make content and to be out there in the streets playing the game every day, and telling others about the game, and judging the game, and cosplaying, and bringing these heroes to life, and all these various aspects of the multi-headed hydra that it took to push Flesh and Blood to the heights it has currently reached. Seeing it all in one place was very, very special. The camaraderie and the friendships that arose out of it were even more special. I can't recall anything like that in my life, where 16 theoretical participants in the Celebrational, or maybe 15. I don't remember the exact number. Maybe 14. However many theoretical participants there were in the Celebrational, there was a lot more people than that there. And so 60 some people of diverse backgrounds, diverse experiences, diverse professions, every form of diversity you could possibly think of, diverse ways of engaging with the game, all brought together in this beautiful mash of friendship, united by a common interest. And you want to talk about realizing kind of the mission statement of your game, and the Celebrational weekend was absolutely it.
It was a great example of exactly what you said, the mantra of Flesh and Blood, of bringing people together through the common language of playing games and such. But even beyond that, what was great about it was, there were those who brought their partners, their significant others, their husbands, their wives, and or whatever. But there were those, for example, like Steven DM Armada brought his father, and who wanted to experience it all. Yui from Japan brought her mother alongside her. There was just people brought friends, and some people, went stag like myself and just had a great time meeting all those out there whom you have these interesting interactions with, or you have familiarity with through the magic of the internet, because you either see them tweet, you respond to it, you like it, you retweet it, you have that engagement and that relationship developed. But when you meet them in person, you don't know what you're going to get. And one of the best things I will say is everybody whom I met was awesome. And don't get me wrong, those who I had met for the first time. But there was one evening where we were coming back from the sheep shearing dinner extravaganza, which was the coolest thing ever, by the way.
It was so much cooler than it sounds, and it really was a dinner based around a sheep shearing exposition.
I want to sort of also just maybe add a little bit more detail to this. We were put on a steamboat, shipped off to some farm island, and it was
100-year-old steamboat, yeah.
Which, for the record, it was basically you walk off the boat and you're on this beautiful little island, and you walk into this wonderful restaurant environment, and everybody's dressed up real nice, and you think it's like this really posh dinner, and you're like, wow, this is amazing. And then 20 or 30 minutes into the dinner, some dude in overalls comes out. He's like, if you want to come see me shear some sheep, you're gonna be around the corner, so just make sure you eat real quick and just come around back. You see me some...
No idea.
No idea. And I didn't even know if he worked there. I didn't know what the story was. I just thought it was some random dude. And I was like, Monica, who is James White's daughter, was there. And she was teasing me on the way, saying that we're going to go to see some sheep getting sheared. And I was like, ha, ha, ha. Maybe we can get Josh Scott to do his beard, and ha, ha, ha. And then that happened. And I look at Monica and she's like, I told you so. And I was like, you did tell me so, absolutely. But that whole experience was great. But on the way back, after a few glasses of wine there and back, it was myself and the 1-2 Juice crew, and they kind of pulled me aside. They're like, hey, we just want to say that it's really cool to meet you, and you're really cool. And it's like, it was just such a flattering thing. But then it was just, we told one joke back and forth, and we're like, we just mesh. And we spent the rest of the evening hanging out, and every moment there on forward, just being buds. And we have a group chat now, and it's just this friendship that has developed that you would otherwise never get. And I think that is what I take away from the Celebrational, it's like, yeah, it was great. We toured LSS. We saw a tournament in a very unique format with great players, great experiences, the boat rides, the dinners, the this. But I left with these very strong bonds with people that I would never otherwise get to see. And I think that is what is lost in all of this, because everybody will see the aftermath of, okay, well, Brody won and he has this monstrosity of a card that he gets now. But who cares? And I say that with all due respect. I don't care about the who won the tournament. I cared about everything that happened before 8 a.m. and after like 6 p.m. when the games wrapped up, and we were able to just be friends and enjoy our time there.
Yeah, I think everyone feels exactly the same. Truly a special event.
It was great. And I do want to just address something, because there was this sort of mild uproar regarding perceived advantage of these players. And I kind of want to clarify a few things, that the players did get the set a couple days. I think it was 2 days prior to the tournament beginning. They got the cards in hand. After getting the cards in hand, I believe they had exactly 0 waking hours of daylight to actually utilize or play with them, because everybody's schedule was very well manicured and curated, but from 8 a.m. till approximately 10:30 p.m. every single night. So
that's if you shut it down at 10:30 p.m., which nobody did, by the way.
No.
Yep.
No, we were all, yeah.
I will say, I don't want to be too hard on folks who are like, oh, this is unfair. Like, broadly speaking, I understand where you're coming from. Yes, ideally, everyone gets the set at the same time, blah, blah, blah. I understand that. I also think that sometimes I wish people would just have a charitable interpretation of our actions instead of assuming we're just colossal dolts who don't consider anything and don't care about things like, creating good tournaments and making sure things are as fair as you can possibly make them, which, by the way, you never can. There's no such thing as fairness in TCGs, just to be clear. Like, is it fair that some people have to go to work on Friday before the tournament and others get to test all day? No, that's not fair. Fairness doesn't exist. It's a myth. But the idea that any of these players went into the calling with any kind of advantage, so monstrously false. I have never been more exhausted than I was after the 3 days of the Celebrational and the ridiculous schedule that we had. And I wasn't playing, by the way. I got to take a moment during the day and maybe breathe. And I was just ground to absolute dust. We had every single second of our scheduled waking hours meticulously planned out, filled with activities, filled with fun. And all those players did basically terrible in the calling.
They did.
I think two participants made day 2, and I think one dropped immediately, and the other was Saint, who went a little bit deeper, but didn't really put together any kind of threatening run or anything. And I'm not surprised. There was no way any of those people were ever going to do well in that event.
So the box, the wonderful gift box that was gifted to us with the play mat and a few packs plus the set, I still have not opened it. It is still sealed in my luggage because I did not get a chance. And again, like you said, I wasn't playing. But from the moment of meeting in the lobby at 8 a.m. to, okay, all your scheduled stuff is done, the night is yours, and you realize it's 11 p.m., and you're like, okay, I'm going to go back. And everyone's like, no, why go back? There's so much to do. And I was like, you're right. When am I ever going to see you guys, this reliably again? So you go to bed at 3 a.m., and then you're up at 6. I think I averaged about a little over 4 hours of sleep a night, sustained through the 7 days that I was there. It was just, but it wasn't like a torturous affair. It was the fact that you want to maximize your time with amazing
just having
people.
So much fun. Yeah, exactly that.
It was great. One thing that did pop out of this is a buddy of mine, Vishra, took a very wonderful screenshot that has now made it to the internet. It has made it to official FAB TCG articles written by our good friend Cash. And I want... First of all, let's clarify something, because Vishra messaged me completely terrified that you were mad at him and angry. And I said, no, it's just Bryan. Bryan is going to have a little bit of an edge when he's going to mention something. I don't think he's pissed off. It's just that it is I just
don't think my way of speaking comes through on the internet always. That's on me. Like, that's fine. I am used to that at this point. But it's more just like, oh, great. Now I have to see my stupid face. Like, every time I open my phone, there's me just looking like an idiot. And, like, it's whatever. I honestly do not care. But I was just like, I don't know. I don't know why I tweet anything, honestly. Like, I just never say anything.
It's not. I will say this, Bryan.
Like, I just, for the 10th time that day, I, like, open my phone, see what's going on Flesh and Blood, the Flesh and Blood universe, and there's fucking me again looking right at me, and I'm like, oh.
I know.
And so I write a tweet, and it seems like I'm way more angry than I actually am. And I like, there is some element of, it's very weird. It's more oddness than anger, where it's like, it's very weird that we do this thing that the absolute vast majority of the world doesn't care about, isn't important to them. We're all complete nobodies. But in this one space, I'm like a person of significance. And because in this micro space that has no real like bearing on the broader world, I'm that person, my reality shifts pretty dramatically, right? Like, that's something that a quote unquote celebrity might have to deal with, where, the paparazzi are outside, they're taking crappy pictures, and then there they are on, their news feed or the front page of the newspaper, as I guess it used to be. And that's a weird experience. Like, it's a weird thing to go through. And I don't get any of the perks that they get. Like, I don't have the
still
money
wait in line for your lattes and stuff.
Yeah. There's no real upside. So it's very strange. It's very odd. I do think there is something about like making sure people are cool with that before you do it. Like, it's one thing to do it to me, and I am cool with it. I am sorry I gave a bit of a fright. To be sure.
Vish is, I've known Vish for a long time. He just got into Flesh and Blood, and everything, it seems that every interaction with you from afar has been one of possible terror for him, because he mentioned about how he got in because of Icelander, and then you banned some stuff out of Icelander, and then the hero LLs, and he's not happy about that, and then he posts the thing, and then you make that tweet, and he's like, oh my god, does he hate me? I'm like, no, not specifically. He just hates everything. Like, it's just different, right? Like, it's a
That's
broad.
a good way of putting it. Yeah.
It's a wide net. You just fell into it. It's the internet. He hates all of that stuff. So that said, we can move on. It's all good. And I want to talk about another massive success of yours, other than that picture, which is heavy hitters. And ultimately, heavy hitters. I would not bullshit you, nor would I bullshit anybody. I've said this multiple times. I wasn't I was a fan of Dusk Till Dawn, but I wasn't super engaged with it. I was not engaged at all with Bright Lights because of the class and such. I still studied it, looked into it, but I wasn't as into it. This is almost like this resurrection, this massive just spike in interest of me personally. But I've heard this from others, that this set is potentially the best draft set that has that Flesh and Blood has. It has rejuvenated a lot of people's interest, not just in Limited, but in the game itself. What was the early perception, or how are you taking this early reception of it as being super positive? How does that make you feel, knowing that you're coming off of potentially two sets that were, I don't want to say hit or miss from a standpoint of, sales or those types of metrics, but in general, just the perception that, hey, we made a set that maybe half the population are not interested. This is one where a lot of people are looking at this, spectating it, playing it, and saying, this is a true banger.
Feels good, man. It's always nice to get that kind of reception. And we took some pretty... With Bright Lights, I would say we took some massive risks. With Dusk Till Dawn, maybe we didn't take enough risks. Maybe it's the opposite problem in that instance. But there was a lot of good that came of those two sets. I don't know if it was manifested in the typical fashion that you would think of a set succeeding. Certainly, the niche nature of Bright Lights, it was known. Like, so you can't make a single class set and not know you're excluding a lot of the population, but it did some good things for us. It taught us some really good things. With Dusk Till Dawn, again, I think we learned a lot, particularly about the process of returning heroes to the game and what our fan base expects that to look like. We learned a lot about hiding the puzzle a little bit too deeply. We learned a lot about communicating better and staying open to the possibility that heroes may need time to evolve and get all their pieces together, and maybe thinking about how we use these sort of slow drip ramp ups a little bit better. And slow drip ramp up is a mode of hero introduction that you'll see again. I think particularly where you're dealing with really risky scenarios like we were with the return of a Light Illusionist, with the return of a Shadow Runeblade, slow drip makes more sense. It's better than just tearing the game apart and sort of asking everything around it to deal with the consequences of that. Because I just want to, this isn't to justify or fight against anyone's perception of things like Dusk Till Dawn, but I want to be very clear that if we did not do Dusk Till Dawn in the sort of more reserved fashion that we did, we could not experience the heavy hitters meta that we are about to experience, or the meta as we saw it for the last few months after the departure of Icelander. Because what would have happened is that two talented heroes would have hopped right into the vacuum that these ice heroes left behind, and things sort of would have just felt like Monarch 2.0, and that's not what we wanted to do. We wanted to introduce these talented heroes in a much more healthy way. And I think if you look at the balance between talents and non-talented heroes, it's in a better spot in the game than it's ever been since the introduction of talents, without question to me. And that was 100% our goal going into this kind of revamp. So, that's all I'll say about those two sets. I think there's good in them. I think there's bad in them. Just like there's good in heavy hitters and bad in heavy hitters. But the initial response is just so affirming. It just shows that people love core flesh and blood experiences. They really do just love getting in there, melee combat, doing the traditional things, and exploring all the wrinkles that still has to offer. It doesn't always have to be talented, flashy, doing new things. Sometimes you just want to play good flesh and blood.
I agree, and heavy hitters seems to have just rejuvenated a lot of people's interest and trust in that kind of experience. But beyond that, for yourselves and on LSS's side, was there a lot more riding on this set based off of the performance? Did you guys feel like this has to be an absolute home run?
No, we weren't feeling any kind of pressure like that. We just want to make good sets. And like I said, I think in their own ways, those last two sets, Dusk Till Dawn, Bright Lights, they were really good sets. I think the mech fans were served really well. I think we ultimately made a great limited environment at a high level with Bright Lights. All those things came to fruition. And the commercial aspects of this game is important, obviously. We need to sell cards to keep doing business. That is the way this world works. That's the way all TCGs work. You have to have people interested in it. Ultimately, though, our core driver is always going to be make a great game and get more people to play the game and experiment, introduce new ways to play the game, figure out what people like, what they don't like. And only by doing that kind of experimentation and being open to the possibility that, yes, this may not sell as well, which if you're not thinking that about Bright Lights, like, you're just not really paying attention. If you make a set with only one class in it, there's a possibility it doesn't sell as well. Obviously that was contemplated, but you can't let that drive you off ideas if they're going to be useful to the game in the long term. And that having that kind of mindset meant that going into heavy hitters, it wasn't like we were desperate for a home run. We wanted to just make another great flesh and blood set. That's always what we set out to do.
Well, you've done so, and you mentioned to me something very that I want you to tell the listeners here, is that when I was asking you about the success of this, and I said, when did you internally know that you had something special. And you mentioned that there was a lot of behavior within the testing environment that just kind of clicked in your mind. You're like, we've got something here. Can you tell everybody what that was?
Yeah, I've been sharing this story in a few places, but it really was a very clear moment. It was the first time the entire dev room was gathered around an ongoing match, and there was a clash. And I don't remember the exact circumstances of the clash. It may have been a trounce clash where there were two clashes on the line with huge stakes. It may have been something like a warrior clashing against a KO and just needs to hit one time to pull out the game and steal it from nowhere. Something along those lines. But the clash happens, the unexpected or exciting result occurs, and the room just erupts. There's just the place. And I'm like, yep, that's it. Like, that is exactly what this set is supposed to do. It felt like we were in the arena with the crowd going wild, and it just embodied everything we were looking for. And it was very clear we were onto something special at that point. And it's really funny, too. I think Heavy Hitters has this very unique trajectory for me in the history of my time developing Flesh and Blood sets. Oftentimes, you start with an idea, you work really hard on it because you're inspired by this flame of passion, this exciting thing, and you work through the realities of it, and you've just spent infinite hours on it. It's all you've been thinking about, and you're just like, your excitement level starts up here, and as you kind of get ground down, it starts to fade a little bit, and you start to doubt a little bit, and that's just, I think, a very natural way for internal hype to go when you're working so tirelessly on these products. Heavy Hitters was the exact opposite for me, where I was like, on its face, this is a little safe. I don't know if players are looking for that. I don't know if they want the core experience, if they need something flashy to really draw them in. And then I played with it, and I played with it, and I played with it, and my hype just kept escalating because of things like the mechanics, because of how much fun it was to play. And that's different. That's different for me. And again, a sign to me that maybe we had a hit on our hands.
You definitely did. And I'm going to be having an episode down the line with Hayden Dale regarding variance. And the object of clashing, wagering, things like that. Wagering, obviously not a variance aspect, but clashing to a degree is. And it's much like in the same vein of if you're playing Rhinar or KO and you're discarding cards, you can kind of tailor and sculpt that variance in your odds to a degree. But this is a new element of variance to the game that may be a departure from what others may have kind of adhered to Flesh and Blood as being like, this is a game of not necessarily predictability, but the best player will win based off the fact that there's very few random elements to kind of mess you up. In this case, is this kind of a little bit more of a departure from that reliability and that stability towards more elements of variance to not just hype up the excitement in game, but also, I mean, it's a way to bring in or give players who might not be the elite chances to have those big minor victories even within a particular turn sequence. Is that something you guys are actively looking to explore more?
Yes, I think discrete variance events are very, very good when the foundation of your game is such a low variance foundation as it is with Flesh and Blood. And there's limits to that. Every time I talk about variance, I think people get very nervous. They think the game will become an RNG fest. We are huge fans of the core of Flesh and Blood. We're not trying to rewrite history. We don't want our game to be other games. We aren't trying to get to that world. We are just trying to healthily introduce a little bit more variance, have a little bit more fun with it, let these events happen. And yes, I think Heavy Hitters is a very, very good illustration of how we want to do those things. And great players are still going to win a lot in Heavy Hitters. Like, I don't think you're going to see win rates plummet and all of a sudden they feel like they have no control over their outcomes. They still get infinite decisions to make along the course of the game. They're going to do the smart thing the vast majority of the time. That's going to benefit them. The vast majority of the time, they're going to win a lot. Stays consistent. But it's going to be upended once in a while. And I think it's going to feel really, really good for players on the other side. And it's going to tell great stories. I mean, you covered that finals match where the clashes were just absolutely breaking in favor of the Warrior over and over and over. And you saw how much excitement it added. Like, honestly, in the room, people gathered around the monitors to watch. You just heard it across the, over and over and over. Like, it did its job so effectively.
It was an extra layer that I have been missing from this game. I mean, having done Gwent for 5 years, there's a lot of random elements of, okay, at the end of the turn, damage a random thing. And it's like, okay, it's a 1 in 8 that this could potentially win you the round, and you take these risks. And there's a lot of excitement in that regard. And obviously, that was lacking to a degree in Flesh and Blood, because a lot of the variables were solved. It was just solved on one side. As a broadcaster, I knew all the pieces going in, but this is a whole other element that I'm so glad is here, because from my selfish perspective of making the game more exciting to spectate, this is the right recipe. That there are going to be heroes in there that want to clash, and what I'm truly waiting for, Brian, is for everybody to have their little superstition or their little habit or their wind up for the clash. And like when I was doing it, I would slide the card to the middle of the combat zone, the combat chain. I'd rub it around, get it nice and warm, and then reveal it on the same time to get a little bravado going on. And some players were starting to do that, and that's what I like, is that a little bit of the personality and that flair gets into the game, and that is awesome. That is so awesome. Now, another part of the excitement of broadcasting this game is the names of the cards, Brian, and this is something that you and I were definitely talking about. And you know, some of them were like, is this a Bryan card? Like, there's a lot of the poker related cards, you know, runner, double down is that's a blackjack, cut the deck. There's a lot of these terms that come from poker and card gaming from a gambling perspective, but there was a lot of other cards like had suggestible names that you were adamant were not your design. And I have to ask about the relative horny level of these card names that some people might look at and be like, questionable, but I got you. For example, having ball breaker on the board was pretty fun to say. I get it. Like, my dad's Italian, you know, my grandmother's from Italy. Ball breaker is basically another term for somebody who's just kind of busting your chops. It's just somebody who's giving you a hard time. And I could see how that can relate. But then there's like Pound Town and Ball Breaker, and there's, you know, some other greasy ones out there. Is this where we're going? The packs say 16 plus? I get it, but I'm just saying.
Look, I do think we should lean into 16 plus a little bit. There's room for that. There's room for a mature game in the space, and you know, I think 16-year-olds probably appreciate those names a lot. There is an element of cultural divide here, I think, that works through a lot of this. First of all, New Zealanders are just kind of like jokier. Like they crack more. They kind of like fire back and forth with each other. It is different as a culture, and there's also terms that just don't like necessarily translate on a one-to-one. Like I don't think Pound Town is meant to be horny. I think it's meant to be like beating you up. And
I agree. Look, that was the first
same thing about.
Yes.
The same thing about Ball Breaker. I think it's the same thing. Like you said, busting someone's chops, breaking your balls. That's kind of.
I've watched The Sopranos throughout about 3 times. I think breaking balls is basically, I'm just breaking your balls. Like, you know, it's just like, I'm just giving you a hard time. I'm just poking fun at you. And now KO's got it. Yeah.
If you take all of these and line them up side by side, I understand how you get to the point where, wow, this seems like a pretty horny set. I don't think that was the intention. And it's whatever. It's kind of a fun thing for people to have a good time with, as long as they are doing so in a respectful manner. And that is always the key. I think, like, we can have these things. We can have a good time, tell jokes. You just got to make sure that everyone is on board, everyone's comfortable with it. I hope none of this crosses the line where people are now uncomfortable engaging with Flesh and Blood. That is 100% not the intention. And like I said, I don't think it's intentional at all. But if the community wants to have a good time with it, and go ahead and have a good time with it.
I think outside of the card names and the artwork, I think the only time I've been more uncomfortable playing a game would be, the only times I've been uncomfortable, not at these card names, is either the hygiene of my opponent or the deck box that they have selected. And I'm like, So
I've seen a few of those over my time. That to me is a far greater step in the wrong direction. But yeah, I think just keep in mind the comfort of your company and your opponents and your LGS, and be smart. Be smart. That's all. Just be smart. Be an adult, and look out for your fellow players, and then it'll all be good.
Now, plus or minus edginess on the next set's card names.
Card names, I'm not sure. Other things, plus edginess.
Oh boy. Okay. All right. That's where we'll leave that. I don't want to get into that anymore. But you are very well known for just being fearless to a degree of confronting bad takes, and just sometimes just saying, hey, like, you're just wrong. And I want to paraphrase something that you said to me and Craig. We were having ramen the other day, and we're just chatting about some random stuff, and we're just talking about bad takes and this and that. And you mentioned something, and I'm paraphrasing, you can correct me here, but like, what happened to just someone being flat out wrong? When a bad take is just a bad take and they're wrong, why do I have to give somebody the benefit of the doubt, or give somebody more than one thought when what they're saying is just flat out stupidity and wrong? I want you to elaborate, or maybe correct me what I'm saying there. That was a paraphrase, but that was part of our conversation, which I think is, I'm very much the same way. In the same way of, like, punch a bully in the face, I'm the same way of, if somebody is just being unreasonable and has a really wrong and bad take, don't be aggressively angry and vile about it, but say, no, this is wrong because XYZ. I want you to talk a little bit maybe about...
Well, it's more that just, like, it seems to be you get like, if you type up your tweet and you put hot take : at the front of it, and then you just get to say the dumbest shit possible, that makes no sense to me. Like just because you put those two words in front of something does not give you license to say something which is demonstrably false and not rooted in reality whatsoever. And then we all have to be like, well, he said it's a hot take, so I'm not going to call that out. Like, no, that's just dumb. And people engage with it as if it's something that is potentially real, and it shapes their mind state, it shapes their decisions going forward. And how about you just say the take if you believe it to be true, and then you get blown up for it if it's really dumb and really bad? That seems like a much braver way to go about things, as opposed to just being like, hot take, here's the stupidest thing you've ever heard, and when you call me out on it, I'll just be like, bro, it was a hot take. It's kind of like it was a prank. Like, you did
it's
something
a prank, bro.
Stupid and annoying, and you deserve to be told why it's not correct, or why it's harmful to have that quote unquote hot take. Like, very much entering my old man yelling at clouds phase. I have considerable concerns about the way social media warps our world and reality, and the way we interact with each other as humans. And sort of like the Celebrational enforced that, where, I mean, I have no issues with anyone who attended the Celebrational, but it was clear how much more genuine and direct and fruitful conversations were when we were all just sitting down together and talking and brought together in the same space. And I think that I get frustrated by the state of internet discourse, and I see society lean more and more into it over time. And I'm just like, why can't we get back to genuine conversations, true explorations of these things, rather than just bite-sized garbage that we spew out there in order to get engagement? It frustrates me, and that is an issue bigger than Flesh and Blood. It honestly is kind of unrelated to Flesh and Blood in most ways. It certainly happens in that space, but it's not born of that space. It's symptomatic of broader issues with how we engage with each other, how we speak with each other. And Yeah, I'd like to see it get better. Like, part of me just wants Flesh and Blood to be this bastion for everything good in the world. That's never going to happen. Like, that is an unfair burden to place on a TCG. But I would love if we just did some things differently than broader society. And I think we do. Like, there are things that we do very, very well. And we are broadly, I don't want to say these problems are solved, but we broadly are more welcoming, more accepting, with certainly sad exceptions along the way. But I just want more of that. I want more Flesh and Blood being like the best possible place to exist in.
Whenever somebody starts something with like, no offense, but it feels like they've just been promoted to 00 status and they get licensed to kill. Like, they can just say whatever they want. No offense, but, and then they get to say it. And you're right, because it's a prank, bro. When I was on the FAB cruise playing poker, one of the dudes across from me found out that I was Canadian, and that was going to be his whole thing, where he's talking about how America's better than us. And I was like, okay, I don't care. And then he's like, I'd rather have Biden than Trudeau. I said, cool. You don't even have to make a choice. Like, that's not even in your
Turns
wheelhouse.
out they're in two separate places.
Yeah, I'm like, that's cool. I'm not trying to sell him to you. It's all right. We're not open for trades. And then he's like, we saved you. We saved you. I said, from what? He said, the communists. I said, cool. And then he's like, I'm smarter than you. I said, I unless you're Dr. something, I don't care, And then afterward, he kept going, kept antagonizing. And I'm just trying to have a good time. It's me, it's Logan Peterson, it's Charmer, and a bunch of other people. And everybody else at the table's getting really uncomfortable. And I started like fighting back. I said, where did you go to school? How do you know you're smarter than me? He's like, well, you're just 20 something. I said, that is the kindest thing you have said to me. Thank you so much.
Win.
I said, I said, I appreciate that so much. I said, however, I'm like, why can't we just be friends? Like, why are you making this so antagonistic? He's like, I'm just joking around, man. I said, no, you're not. I said, because I was not engaging, so it's no longer a joke because no one's laughing. So I like put my hand out. I said, can we shake hands and just move on? And he's like, sure, man. He's like, I don't know what you're getting all riled up about here. I said, I'm not. I said, I'm like, but you can't have it both ways. Like, either we're doing this or we're not. And I would much prefer not to, It was like one of those things. I'm like, total jackass. Anyways.
Poker was a weird place, man. One of the reasons I eventually moved away from that was just some very, very bad actors. Great people, too. I don't want to cast too broad a net. But, that was routine at the poker tables. You had to engage with things like that. And it was just, like, accepted as culture. And it was garbage, and nobody should have to go through that.
Well, that was it. And I was like, there's no cameras here. You're not, like, are you trying for a sponsorship? Are you trying to, like, we're just having fun. Like, we're playing, 1-2 poker here. Like, what?
Micro stakes poker.
Yeah.
This guy wants to bully someone at the table.
That was it. And he was like, at one point, the blinds come around, and I had a hand, and I wanted to raise, and I put my chips in the middle. And I didn't call raise. And, by the rules, if you don't call the raise, you're just calling the bet. He's like, whoa, you can't do that. That's just a call. Dealer, that's just a call. I said, whoa. I said, all right. I'm like, didn't know that we're, rule sharking at a 1-2 table here, but I adhere to whatever the rule is here. I intended to raise, but now I don't. But now I have good cards, And then he goes around and he, like, raises on top of me. And I just folded. I'm like, I do not want to get in on this. You can have my $2. Congratulations.
Enjoy.
Yeah. All right. We've got a bunch of questions from the community that I want to rifle through here. I don't know if we'll get to all of them. You are usually a lightning rod, you and James, for all kinds. So I've weeded out a lot of the, hey, what's your favorite hero and such. You have mentioned this a lot. It is clearly Arachne, right?
I have no idea what the answer is. It changes every week.
That's what I figured. So let's get to some of the more nitty-gritty. As Andy Modell has tweeted and asked, are talents dead? And I think that this is a very pertinent question, not necessarily from the capacity of they're just not strong or the heroes who have talents are not strong, but are you guys actively scaling back on talented heroes?
Let me ask a counter question. If you hold this belief, I don't know if you do. Let's pretend you do. Why would you feel that we're scaling back on talents?
Maybe because
like what is the evidence of
Bright Lights didn't have talents, nor did heavy hitters. So there's 2 back-to-backs, And I suppose, look, that's a very small sample size, given the fact that you are all 3 or 4 sets ahead of us already. So we don't know what's around the bend. I don't believe that talents are dead, that I think they're going to come back. But I do, to a degree, believe that there is perhaps, I don't want to say a scaling back of them, never to be seen again. But I think that it may have been on the radar to say we're going to print a few sets, possibly back-to-back, that just don't have them anymore. We want to reintroduce heroes that can be strong without a talent associated to them.
Last 5 sets are talented, untalented, talented, untalented, untalented. I do not think there is any evidence that we have at all moved away from talents. It's just sometimes there's untalented sets, and sometimes we want to explore ideas in that space. Sometimes we want to explore things in the talented space. I turned the question around because I think this is not the first time I heard this question. I don't think it's a bad question. I think it's totally reasonable. But it is very funny to me how, and I've said this before, as TCG players, we are asked to extrapolate conclusions from very, very small sample sizes. That's how you succeed at TCGs. And I think we do that with broader things where it doesn't apply quite as well. There were 2 non-talented sets in a row. That's all that means. And in no way are we done with talents.
Oh, for sure. Trust me. If I wake up, fire up Magic, do a draft run, and opening hand has 3 lands in it, Magic's awesome. But the next set, and then when I don't draw lands for the next 8 turns, it's the worst. All within that little microcosm of that one game, I've changed my mind.
Yeah, that's how it works. Make immediate decisions and just stick to those conclusions.
But tweet them out. You have to tweet them out, right?
Put hot take before it, though. Put hot take.
Perfect. That's exactly. You are now insulated against any clapback. So can you tell us, I guess, what talents are going to be in the next set?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
You're a sly one.
I'll tell you nothing.
Yeah, I know. I
won't even tell you if the next set is talented.
Damn it.
No information from me.
It's okay. This will get clipped, and it'll be...
Yeah, chop it how you need to. Yeah. That's fine.
From Gnarl asking, how often does the dev team have to actively power down a card during testing? Are you able to give any examples from, I guess, previous effects or previous cards that you've printed? Some that... I think you were actually talking to me about Raisin Army.
That got buffed, not powered down. But yeah, I mean, cards move around all the time. And that is what dev is. It's cards moving up, cards moving down. I could give dozens and dozens examples of them moving both ways. And we just try and find sweet spots, and we try and craft the gameplay experiences we want. And that is what our job is. That's how this all works. And the design brush is much broader than the development brush. Design is very much about concepts. Oftentimes, every element of a card will have to change in order to make the design brush work. So that's pitch, attack values, defense values, cost. All those things can change throughout the course of a card's life, and many of them do throughout the course of a card's life.
Can you give us one example of a card, perhaps, that has been powered down but still performs very well?
I would have to. It's just been a while since
That's fair.
been doing the powering up, powering down of heavy hitters. I would have to think a little bit. I'm trying to get one to come to mind very quickly.
Even from previous sets, perhaps, that you had a hand in, like, let's say, like one that comes to mind is, for example, Starstruck. Was that as the initial design of it, or was it powered down? Like, it feels...
Man, I'm not sure that card ever changed, actually.
Yeah.
I think that card was basically stuck from the moment it entered dev and was just very, very good. Fell at a nice value. It's possible it was a color shift and came in at red or something. A lot of times, like, flashy effects like that will come in at red, and we just go, oh, actually, this is more interesting if this is a yellow card, and actually ask you some difficult questions. So that is possible, but I don't remember anything specifically about Starstruck. I think that concept was pretty consistent throughout.
Solid. Let's move on. Michael at T Plays Fab says, what is the plan to evolve Wizard class past the current Wildfire-focused combo builds? And a lot of people are asking about this fabled now all-arcane set that's coming around the bend. We don't know when. However, I guess that's a valid question. Kano, I've always painted as being a solution to metas and not necessarily the problem in a particular meta. However, it seems that the the only way to play it is with these wildfire combos that try to pounce on unsuspecting metas. Is there plans to maybe take Kano and find new landscapes to sort of explore?
I think that here's the best way for me to answer that question. If Ether Wildfire was preventing Kano from being interesting, I would just ban that card, and then I would do other stuff. I think Kano remains interesting right now. I think it is a cool thing to have in very small doses in the meta. I think the people who love Kano really love Kano. Happy to offer that experience for them, and I'm not looking to reset that at this particular moment in time. When we come back to the Wizard class, and this is just like me speaking to the brutes, a few months ago. When we come back to your class in earnest, then you can judge where your hero is at right now. Because Wizard is now at the point where it is a class that it really hasn't been touched in good faith since Arcane Rising. I know there was Uprising. I think the Wizard cards present in that set were very hard geared towards Icelander. There weren't honestly all that many of them, and we're just kind of doing something different. I think the core Wizard class is maybe the class that has got, I won't say maybe, like if you just look at raw reality, it's the class that's gone the longest since a kind of pure revisit. And once you get that revisit, then let's talk the Wizard class. Let's see where we're going with it. But, answering this question now would kind of tip too much as to what we're working towards for Wizard in the future.
That's fair. Don't want to pull the veil back before it's ready. Hamish have pushed the point, as well as Kevin Bray, are both asking regarding dual class cards, and I'll just sort of summarize both of their interests and both of their questions into one here, being they're very successful. They've really enhanced the limited experience. So is that just something that, introduced in Outsiders and now here, is this something that is almost going to be a mainstay to a degree in draftable sets? And the other sort of addendum to this is, will there ever be like these odd pairings that of class and other class that's not in that particular set? Like, for example, imagine there was a Warrior Runeblade dual card, but Runeblade wasn't in Heavy Hitters.
So they will continue to appear where they make sense. I don't think they fit every single set structure. They do work quite well with this kind of 3-class 6-hero structure that we've used a couple times now, Outsiders and Heavy Hitters. And I will also tell you, I really like that structure. I would be shocked if we don't go back to it again. We are kind of developing these structures now. It's something we're starting to think about a lot more, and what works, what doesn't. I think 3-class hybrid cards, 6 heroes works really well. I'm confident in that. I'm confident there's a lot more we can do in that space. I'd be shocked if we don't see it again. As far as hybrid cards that are of a class not in the set, I think so. I think that is something I could see us doing. It would be at high rarity, probably Majestic only would be my guess. Possibly expansion slot as opposed to main set. That seems within range, but I do like the concept. It's been discussed before. It wouldn't shock me if it ultimately makes it to print.
All right, I want to get to some of the more pertinent ones here. One being from our friend Rich, the Polish guy, great dude, asking essentially, with the amount of equipment, seemingly playable generics and new heroes in Heavy Hitters, certainly feels like a quote-unquote new Welcome to Wraith, and goes on to ask, was the goal of a set like this a new welcoming point for players, a new opportunity for players to get introduced to the game and not have, for example, these rare equipments that should be Majestics in other sets or would have been are now available at a low cost, a low rarity, a great limited experience altogether. Is that the objective of Heavy Hitters, is to sort of have a refresh Welcome to Wraith experience?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I won't say it's the objective, but with every set, you are asking the question, like, how can new players engage with this? And Heavy Hitters is a more purposeful shift towards core mechanics of Flesh and Blood, also designed to be a much simpler set than the set that preceded it. You can just go count the words on cards here and contrast that to Bright Lights. It is a fraction, and that was very intentional. We wanted a bit of a palate cleanser, something a little bit more digestible, something with a lower word count for sure. So that was absolutely contemplated. It's not like the goal was to make a new Welcome to Wraith. That's not exactly what's going on here, but it was designed to be more accessible for sure.
I would be remiss if I don't answer or ask a question on behalf of Nathan Crawford, somebody whom I highly respect. I told him that he builds decks that I want to play. So this is from Nathan. Does LSS design decisions actively try to prevent strategies like the life gain Oldhim we saw a year ago? Attrition-based fatigue is obviously a supported strategy, but not when it's taken to the extreme. Basically, is LSS actively trying to make that not a valid strategy?
I do not want you to be able to find long-term sustainable success at the game of Flesh and Blood by only defending with your cards and only gaining life. I don't know if that answers the question entirely, but I think there has to be some offensive element towards what you're doing. I think average Oldhim deck was on the fringe of acceptable. I think pure life gain Oldhim that literally just wanted to gain life and defend on every turn. Even Hammer was an afterthought, and only if you had the resources for it. And that was the extent of your offensive output. You really weren't trying to go harder than that. I think that was a bit of a problem. It was not the ideal Flesh and Blood gameplay, and we are trying to avoid situations like that. I do think, however, if you can do that for a single tournament when nobody is respecting that strategy and steamroll the tournament and find success, I think that's very cool. And a really good quasi-example of that is Charles Dunn's U.S. Nationals win. I think that is a spot where that Briar deck was not particularly respected. It was not all that well known, and nobody was really... when Oldhim was a fixture in the metagame, everyone had their anti-fatigue package, and they knew how they were playing that. And in that tournament, nobody respected that. And that meant for that one tournament, Charles could come in, beat up on everyone, find success. And certainly Briar hit LL soon after that on the back of Charles's win. But even in the weeks that followed that, because that was early on in the Nationals window, we didn't see that Briar deck find a lot of success. As soon as it was on the radar, people were able to adapt to it. I think that's great. I think that's fine. I have no objection to that happening again. I also think that deck, had elements of offense to it. It wasn't pure life game, pure turtle. So it is really great in that sense. It's exactly the type of control / fatigue strategy I want to see succeed in the game. So all that's good. I do not think you should be able to consistently win games of Flesh and Blood by only deploying your cards defensively.
Andrew at Blasphemous asking about Heavy Hitter Solo CC, which was a kind of debuted at the Celebrational. For those who don't know, it's basically you build a constructed CC deck only within the confines of Heavy Hitters as a set. Is this something that can be potentially more of a competitive format that you might see as a battle hardened or something like that?
In extremely small doses. I don't think we want to do, a long-term season of it. I don't think it has to be something that is offered at armories. That should always be around. But I do think we will find small windows to use the solo format, and we will do so. We'll do so when it makes sense.
I've got a couple more, Brian. One from Adam Little on Facebook asking, how do you view the expansion slot on heroes with poor CC performance? We've seen cards like Warrior give Bolton an extra hand, and Reelin, and there's Reelin for Riptide, but there are still some heroes who are struggling for a much needed powerful Majestic, and for example Dromai and Katsu got some. This is the expansion slot. To me, I think is a great addition because there are going to be heroes that are left out, so you kind of want to give them a little bit of a lift from the capacity of like, here's one Majestic that can open up another playstyle or bolster an existing strategy. But I guess to a degree, if you only have X amount of opportunities to print for certain heroes, eventually some are going to get left out in the dust. How do you evaluate which heroes are getting these expansion slot lifts and which aren't?
Yeah, it depends on a lot of factors. I think the starting point is do we have a cool card we want to make? Like, that's step one. And just throwing numbers at a hero until they're good is not the purpose of the expansion slot. The expansion slot is supposed to introduce exciting, flavorful, fun cards. And sometimes with heroes who may have flaws presently, it is harder to do that than others. Could we just make a broken card that makes Riptide tier 1? Yep, I could do that. It's not hard. You just do something stupid and you put a lot of numbers on the card, and then all of a sudden Riptide is better than everything else. Is that good? Is that flavorful? Is that in line with what I believe Riptide players ultimately want? No, I think they want to see their hero's promise paid off. And that is what you're supposed to do with the slot. And does that mean maybe you have to work in more incremental advantages and build that hero up? I think it does. And, we can look at something like Coercive Tendency for Arachne. I think that's a really good standout use of the expansion slot. That card, ludicrously powerful. Like, just on its face, extremely, extremely strong. And I think it is exactly the right way to give Arachne a strong card. In fact, there's no numbers on the card. It just plays into their core game plan. It feels like it's an empowerment of what they've done before, not totally resetting things. So they're just relying on something that's above rate. And cards like that are really hard to make. Like, there's not this well of infinite cards that answers exactly the question that a hero is trying to answer. And also, you have to be very sure in these conclusions. Like, if I make a card on the power level of Coercive Tendency for, say, Bolton, because Bolton wasn't doing good before. Well, Bolton looks pretty good right now. And then turns out Bolton is tier 1 in this metagame, and we made an absolutely pushed, ridiculous card for Bolton to try and put him into tier 1 status when he didn't think he was there, and he was actually there. Because of how far in advance we're working, that's just going to hit at a moment when Bolton is already absolutely juiced. And you saw that a little bit with Tome of Imperial Flame and Dromai. Dromai was kind of on top of the meta when that card came out, and maybe it looked a little scary when it dropped. I think ultimately it has proven to be okay, and a lot of that is just how the meta has more broadly evolved around Tome. But you could certainly see how that could have went very wrong, and the metagame was just dominated by Dromai, as a lot of people were doomsaying at the time. So it is a slot fraught with peril, fraught with very, very hard decisions. It's not as simple as just saying this hero is bad right now, let's give them awesome cards until they're good, or let's just give them above rate attacks. You have to be a little bit more thoughtful than that, and I'm really pleased with how the expansion slot has worked thus far, and I think we're only getting better at making cards for that slot. So more to come for sure.
Love it. I love it. I do want to ask you one more question before we move on, which is the fabled, the Deathmatch Arena. Beautiful card. Awesome. Day one kind of went with not much fanfare amidst hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of packs being ripped. Someone, I think, opened it, didn't really make a stink about it. But when it finally was revealed, you had mentioned to me that this is potentially one of the rarest cards to open. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
I believe that info on polls is now out there in the wild, and you can go check that out. I don't have it in front of me, but it is rare, and it's only in cold foil. Now with the sheets out there, you can see that. And that's really what I was hinting towards, is that this is not as prevalent as something like the gems from previous sets. You can only find it in cold foil. And I think it's cool that that's the way it's presented. It is going to be very special when you crack that Deathmatch Arena. And I think it is something that you absolutely do not need this card under any circumstances. But if you have it, it'll spice up your UPF games a little bit. Maybe it's the thing that inspires you to go ahead and check out UPF for the first time. And I've heard people say things like, I just want to start with Deathmatch Arena and play. Go for it. It's your format. Like, absolutely go ahead and play your UPF games that way. I think that's cool. And you use that card however you want to use it. And I am very, very happy with how that Fable turned out. And I think the response to it has been good. And I like that players are open to using that slot in new and interesting ways.
Nice. Well, it's a great card. It's a very cool looking card, and it really encapsulates the theme and the flavor of heavy hitters. Because when I was casting that last match, I had just kind of been looking back on the past couple days of casting the calling, and I was just alongside Craig, and Ethan from Savage Feats was kind of every now and then changing the cameras and the camera angles to show the hand, the board, and then us in a little corner. And we were just hands on our heads, just gripped, white-knuckled to see the results of these. I think it was Koi Din versus Darren Ying at the end of that one, which was one of the most exciting matches I have ever cast of any game that I have ever done. And I have cast a dozen games. I've done 1,000 matches in my life. That is a top fiver all time in terms of excitement, in terms of just crazy ending, and the awesome people that were involved. And I want to give you full credit, because without a set designed like it was, those lasting moments, those fleeting kind of the clock just ticking away, the last bastion of hope for one of the two players wouldn't have been that exciting if it wasn't for that particular set. If that was Outsiders and it was just a dominated Azalea arrow, you see that a mile away. This was a completely different ball game. There was a lot of moving parts that just became greater than the sum of those parts. So thank you for doing such a good job on this set. And I know that the vast majority of the volume and the noise out there is typically criticism and negativity, but you have to hear it. And I told you this in person. I want everybody else to say it as well, to hear this as well, is that this set is my favorite set, and I haven't even begun to scratch the surface. That might change, but as somebody who loved Tales of Aria and all the cool interactions, this is the next level for me, because it's with the types of heroes, the types of interaction, and the fun layers that go beyond just numbers on cards. So
yeah, I'm so pleased to hear that. I'll be honest, I'm kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like, I'm waiting for whenever something is like universally praised, the cool thing to do is going to be like, actually, this is why it sucks. And I'm waiting for that wave to start because it feels inevitable. It hasn't happened yet. I really hope it never happens. And I hope people just have a blast playing this set, because I did. Like, I was in the events all weekend. I was there playing the world premiere. I was playing the Ravenous Rabble events. I was just out there playing games, having a blast, and having so much fun seeing people experience heavy hitters for the first time. Met so many great people in those games over the course of the weekend, played excellent matches, and I just am so excited that other people are going to get to do the same thing.
It's like, I know what you're saying from that capacity, where it's cool to hate on things that are people like to a degree, but when those types of YouTubers are done making the videos of this is the best deck ever for this set, once they're done breaking the meta before the set releases, that's when they'll go to, actually, here's why the set actually sucks, that these decks are bad. It's clicks and views, baby. Pays the bills.
Everyone's got to pay their bills. I bear no ill will. Go out there and do your hot takes. Yeah. You have my blessing.
Make your bread,
just
baby.
Just know though, know what you're doing. But do your thing.
Do your thing. Well, I do have the Patreon Tier 3 Go Again segment that I am just going to lock you in for. You have no choice. Yeah. You're going to stick around for that. And so we're going to ask Bryan questions such as, who's the best FAB player at LSS? We're going to ask him, what question are you tired of answering? I'm going to ask him, are we friends? We're going to have all of these just put to bed. I've got about a dozen questions. You could start thinking about your excuses right now.
Yeah, thinking of my excuse.
Yeah, think of your excuses. This is a Patreon Tier 3 exclusive, so you can go to patreon.com/instantspeed and check out that fun content. But for the rest of us out there, I want to say thank you to our sponsor, our new partner at The Realm Games. And I said that we're going to do some giveaways every single week, and that means this week right now. So here's how you do it. If you go to the YouTube video where this is at, and I'm going to change this every week, put a comment. Say tell me why or who your new favorite hero from Heavy Hitters is, and explain to me why. And one of you will win a $10 store credit at the Realm Games. So make sure you go check out the YouTube channel. Make sure you're subscribed to all that jazz. And also go check out the Realm Games for all of your cool sealed and singles and all that jazz. All right. For everyone else, Brian, I know that this is just I'm not even going to say it. So don't contact Brian, okay, on Twitter. Don't contact him via email. You can go talk to him at an event, absolutely, but not in the bathroom. I'm going to extend my rules to you.
That's a good rule.
Yeah. That's it. That's all. Brian, thank you so much again for doing the show and for, I'm just going to say, being a friend.
I'm always happy to be on the Living Legends podcast. Like, you know that.
I know. And my gosh, and can't wait for Arsenal Pass and Push the Point and everyone else and just jump on. We're all one big happy family. You think that hurts me, but it inspires me, Brian. Inspires me. All right. On that note, I will say thank you again to everybody for listening. It's good to be back. Another year of Flesh and Blood, another year of Instant Speed. We're going to do it right. So don't forget, you're not losing if you're learning. We'll talk to you next time on ISP. Bye-bye.
Well, I work hard. How come everybody wants to shuffle my cards? And I think that it's true. There's nothing of importance on the 6 o'clock news, and I believe